Hello, my dear friend, and welcome to the Spiritually Engineered Podcast, where we take a deep dive into the human experience from a spiritual perspective. Come on in, and I invite you to stay. So, on one work day, me and my colleague, we were riding back after a typical shift on the trails back to the office, and we were having some conversations. And at some point, my colleague had asked me how old I was, and I asked him to guess. And so I threw in some guesses, and many of his guesses were pretty far off from like where I'm at right now. Like the numbers were low, so he was like saying like mid 20s, late 20s, and things like that. I told him the answer, which by the way, I'm 33. If you're curious, and he had commented, "Wow, you don't look 33. You look a lot younger." And and so in that moment, I told him, in my experience, my personal take, I think it has a lot to do with because of just how I carry myself and my perspective that gives me a youthful appearance. Because I'm sure you've seen some people, if you observe their physical appearance and you get that information of how old they are, their physical age, I'm sure you've probably come across people that look a lot older than they are actually. And so when we look at these different examples here and the nuances and where people are, I find it very interesting. But to me, when from there, I was telling him about one of the big contributors, I think, to appear more youthful without trying to use all these creams and all this extra stuff that people do, which to each their own, and I'm sure there's science to back up a lot of things. Cool. Me personally, I try not to worry about all that stuff. I think personally, maintaining a youthful spirit goes a long way. In addition to doing some of the important maintenance of the physical body. Don't get me wrong. Like I think it's just a balance that fits. But I think a lot of it, of just keeping that youthful spirit, or in other words, being in tune with your childlike part, in my opinion, can do tremendous things on the physical body. And I think as a society as a whole, my hot take, if you will, I would argue that many of us lose touch of our childlike part, our inner child, as we age, as we grow older. Oftentimes because of as we start to become aware of the things that are happening on in the world, from like anything we see in the news to our communities, and even our own experiences, what we experience with people. I think a lot of that contributes to us losing touch of our inner child, which is understandable because the world is a pretty heavy place. With all the stuff that's going on out there, it's understandable. But nevertheless, it doesn't take away from the reality that I think it's an epidemic that contributes so much. And with that, that's also part of what can contribute to a lot of people in terms of like going back to my little story, little share about physical aging and stuff, and stress. Stress being one of the big components, the big factors that, for the physical body, it accelerates the aging process. If you're so stressed out over this, is that, and that, whether it could be in your work environment, with the work that you deal with, the people you talk to, you interface with, or it could be from in a local community, or from the countrywide perspective, like like the news, politics, and stuff like that. All that stuff really does scream to me like a lot of stress, too much stress. And on top of that, we have so many people taking themselves way too serious to their own detriment, to the point that to where many people's perspective becomes very, very saturated with emotions and just heaviness and pessimism and all this stuff. And it's just no wonder. Then no wonder that with all that happens, it contributes to a lot of people's physical well-beings, and they're all bent out of shape with the stuff that they engage with, whatever that is, whatever is with you. Do you recognize the things that perhaps you engage with, either through social media or in-person interactions on a day-to-day stuff that fills you with gloom, pessimism? Like, can you identify that for yourself? Or can you identify an area in your life where you feel like you're putting a lot of emotions, a lot of energy into that thing? And maybe perhaps it could be a mixture of like there's a bit of a passion of perhaps about a particular cause or something like that. Or but what if like or do you have something that perhaps you just put a lot of energy in the form of worry and just anger, frustration, or even apathy or losing hope or all this? With the world that we live in, like I said, I recognize, I think it's important to recognize that there's a lot of things that are happening out there that aren't really great. They're not respectful. That's not ideal. But what if through all that, what if I told you through all that stuff, you can still stay tuned in, connected to your childlike part? That is to say, even in the midst of all the stuff that's going on out there, to still stay light and bright. Now that doesn't mean to be ignorant or naive to stuff. Like I said, it's an important thing to have an awareness of where people are, especially with the people that I know, for me, that I talk to, whether either regularly or just random encounters, to just have that awareness rather than just like, oh, forget it, or just um, like for me, I always like to see the best in people. That's like part of my core principles. Like I do believe anybody has the power to really turn their own life around and transform greatly. But there's that important piece of just meeting people where they are, and there's some people that aren't ready to make that change, and they're at that place that's not so good necessarily. But to kind of keep things light and bright in all of this, something that has helped me tremendously goes back to what I mentioned earlier about mindset. Mindset. And it's not just about simply a mindset, because I've already just told you, oh, it's just a mindset. How can I? Because I'm sure you probably could probably you would counter my, I guess my statement with saying like, well, what kind of mindset could just, you know, what kind of healthy, positive mindset could be cultivated in the midst of all the stuff that's going on out there, the atrocities and all that stuff, right? Um, which is fair. I think it's mindset, perspective, but then also understanding, an understanding that goes beyond just something intellectual, but more so in your intuitive self, this sense of inner knowing, that claircognizant part, just a very sharp, intuitive, clear understanding. And that so for me, I understand and know that there is a bigger picture to life. There's a bigger picture for the collective, and there's a big picture to my own life. Just as much as there's a big picture to your life. And we are all part of a collective bigger picture. So this is a whole beautiful dynamic thing that's going on. That's part of when we're talking about the spiritual, what that encompasses. There's a bigger picture at play here that goes beyond what can be perceived by the naked eye. Just because you can't see it physically doesn't mean it's not there. And people who like to make arguments and this and that, and to them I say, you know what? You do you, boo boo. Whatever you feel about whatever, okay, that's rightfully yours. Have a nice day. And hey, I may see you around the next time or not, but I'm going my own way, kind of a thing. The bigger picture. And part of the bigger picture goes back to these five spiritual key principles that I carry myself day-to-day basis. Something that I was taught and that I just kind of I take as my own because I know through my own experiences this has become my truth. The first one being, and I'm going to use the you tense. You are energy. Number 2, you came here to learn and grow. Number 3, you have a unique life purpose. Number 4, you have inner guidance and help. And number 5, you are free. So these are key principles that has helped me put things in perspective. And to kind of break it down, let me see if I can break it down for you in the way that I understand it. So like the first one is that you are energy. You are spirit. You are a spirit that has a physical body. You have been, you are, and you always will be an eternal being. You are an eternal being by default. You're just living a temporary lifetime in the physical body. But you go on. And with that, all the stuff, the emotions, the suffering, the burdens, all this stuff is limited to this earth realm. Once you move on, all this stuff, all these human labels and emotions and all this stuff, the intellect, it all stays here because it doesn't belong out there in the universe. Number 2, came here to learn and grow. Life is a process. It's not meant for everyone or anyone to get it right. It's all a process that's both beautiful and also messy at the same time. And that for each individual, there are many roadways and pathways to success. That's part of the growth process for each and every single one of us. So in the big picture of things, there isn't no right or wrong. Sometimes it can be boiled down to what works and what doesn't work. Number 3, you have a unique life purpose. You made a decision to come here to this school, planet Earth, to do something specific. Now, not so specific to the point where, oh, you came here to connect with this person at this point in time to do this specific thing, and then you're done. Purpose completed. It's not like an assignment, but it's more so in your own aura, your own energy. What do you bring to the table? How you show up everywhere, by yourself, with people, at work, in your personal life, or in social gatherings, social settings. How you show up, your energy, what you bring by your presence. That's your purpose. What you've come to do. It's your vibe, simply put. And the effect that has on other people is special and is needed and is essential. Number 4, you have inner guidance or help. You have your intuitive compass to guide you in the chaos, to guide you in all the noise, and all the overwhelm, the things that's going on. You have that inner knowing, the inner visions, the clear understanding, the feeling that serves as guides. And it's a part of who you are, by design as a spiritual being. It's innate in you. And number 5, you are free. And this one's a big one. You are so free that imagine freedom in all its depth. Imagine being someone who's very confident swimming, for the intents and purposes of this example, of just like being at a swimming pool and just kind of swimming around and doing laps and playing around and kind of playing in that little little area and feeling pretty secure. Now imagine if you were removed from that swimming pool and you were plunged into the middle of the ocean. I'm sure in that particular situation you probably feel nervous, as would I. I feel pretty freaking nervous. And yet, can you visualize all that space that's out there? That freedom to move in the vastness of all that there is out there. That much freedom that is available inside of you right now and can be tapped into any moment. You're so free that you may not even recognize the ways that you give up your freedom. And perhaps you may label it as someone's controlling you or taking advantage of you or all this or just pretty much blaming the outer, where instead it lies from within. And so those are the kind of going into taking a little another crack at it with another shot, at it with explaining the key principles of the big picture. And again, like to you, perhaps if you're listening to this might come off as just like intellectual stuff, which is understandable. But for me, why I certainly believe in all this is because I have this clear, firm understanding within myself. Like I know, I understand. I really can't explain it to you. It's something that understanding has to be felt. And so, and if you're listening to this and you don't have that feel sense, that understanding, I hope one day, and I pray that you can get to that point. Maybe you'll be reminded of this particular episode thanks to your personal team of spiritual helpers or spirit guides. Which, by the way, I forgot to mention, they're also part of the spiritual key number 4. You have inner guidance and help. Meaning you're not alone in this venture and you have spirit guides on the other side, angels, messengers of God, whatever you want to call them, they're assisting you too. And they could bring this back into memory to you. And if you do, I hope that clicks for you. Because that's how a lot of what's clicked for me and my day-to-day experiences and how I've gone through and grown so much and be at this place of my life because of those aha moments when I've had experiences and realizations and insights and okay, when it all starts to make sense, it all starts to click together, like these pieces start to connect and form that big picture I was talking about earlier. You know that big picture? That big picture of life on planet Earth, which was meant to be simple in terms of perspective. And yes, there are nuances, a lot of things in this world, but life is not meant to be complicated. Plus, we don't thrive off things being complicated. Do you thrive off being things being complicated? I mean, if that's something that that works for you somehow, some way, I'm not gonna try to prove otherwise or anything like that. I can only share, right? But I know my experiences when things are simple and understand, much like when you play a game, right? When you understand the rules of a game that are simple, it becomes easier to play the game of life. to hold this perspective in all my opportunities so that it helps me stay tuned in to my childlike part. And what is the childlike part? Let's kind of revisit that here. Because there's a difference between being childlike and being childish. Childish. There are very key distinctions. And I think there are people that confuse this. So, I'm going to clear this up. To be childlike is to be playful, to feel full of joy, to be excited about even doing things that are simple or that just don't seem like anything that may seem mundane, you know? Kind of like how for me, I carry that attitude, when I'm riding, because like if you look at like my job, it's like I basically ride an e-bike, a cargo bike with colleagues, and we go out on the trails and then we do cleaning, vegetation, uh, and then talk to some people, go to events, and we do a lot of picking up trash and stuff like that. And if you look at it from the outside, I'm sure some people look at that and it's like, oh wow, that seems pretty boring. But for me, I love it. It's just like I enjoy it. Part of it because I love and enjoy cycling, and I just like to infuse that spirit of just that play in this opportunity to keep it fresh. Because whatever work that you're involved in, there's a routine to it. You're gonna have to come back to it again and again and again and again. So why not infuse that freshness, the creativity of our childlike part into our daily endeavors? Otherwise, you'll run the risk of just getting bored. Although boredom is not entirely bad. I wouldn't say it's all bad or negative. But anyway, you not run into the risk of just moving through life, not doing much, just kind of like I'm wandering through life without aim or anything like that. Like that energy of just existing rather than living. And on the other side, we have the childish part. The childish part. That's the part that's very, very bitchy, complaining, emotional, tantrum. And one of the key distinctions between the childlike part and the childish part, our childlike part is open. There's a sense of openness and growth. In the childish part, there's this energy of being stubborn or this resistance to growth. And so those are the very key things I think is important. So when it comes to being childlike, it's not saying like necessarily like act like a child necessarily, but there are qualities to what a child has that I can imbue into my own and how I carry myself and what I say and what I do. So it's really about the quality, not like act like a child, because it's just again there's the growth and this maturity, this maturing that happens. But the maturing can only happen, as I mentioned, it's like that openness to growth and expansion. If there's any resistance, there's very little room to mature and expand. But as a soul, we crave that expansion. So to resist that, you're creating this. I'm not saying. I'm saying you like just in this, if this applies to you, you may create that inner turmoil. Again, this may not apply to you. I'm just saying just for the intent of explaining here. So it's about having the qualities, and so I know people who are in touch with their childlike part and are also mature. Those two things can happen at the same time. But again, there are people that misunderstand and they think that it's like, the child part that dies with childhood and stuff like that and whatever, and they'll use age to justify whatever poor perspective they may have on life. But it's like those things can happen. You can have those qualities. And I've met lots of people who've been positive examples. The youthful spirit with that higher perspective in light of all the things that's happening, because yes, trust me, I'm aware and I know. And yes, I think a lot of things that happen out there in the world are awful. Make no mistake. But at the same time, too, it's outside of my control. The only place I have real control is within myself, how I carry myself. So, how I see it is like, I just need to be a positive example to others. I can't force change or make people change. If you do that, in my opinion, you're wasting your time. And the sooner you understand that, the sooner you can really start creating a lasting impact in your community, with your loved ones and friends, families, colleagues, whomever. Because that change happens inside out. It doesn't happen outside in. That's one of the big things I've learned that's helped me. Help me build on my inner peace. So the best that I can do is, in my own autonomous individual self, and being intentional about what I do, what I say, and all that stuff. But recognizing how I carry myself. That doesn't require having to say that this isn't that. But how I carry myself. How I walk. People take note of that. And that can have a positive impact. And I know in my experience that it has. So, that need for a bigger picture is important. Going back to those 5 spiritual key principles that I told you about, it's important to have those locked in, because otherwise, you and I may become at the mercy of the emotions, either my emotions or other people's emotions. The noise, the stories, all that stuff, I will be at the mercy of all that if I don't have a clear sense of a big picture. If you want to be able to expand on that big picture, by the way, please feel free to check out the show notes. Or anywhere I have, in this recording here, as a resource guide to be that stepping stone if you really want to move towards and be that beacon of light in the world of darkness, or in a world that feels predominantly dark at times. But I would argue that there's way more forces that are light forces, beings of light. They're more of a majority than all the negative and the evil or bad stuff that we as labels. And to kind of get into wrapping up, when it comes to your childlike part, I know for me, a memory that has stuck out to my father and my dad that he brings up now was that I remember it was 4th of July. I can't remember. It was like vague memory. But I remember I think I was probably 7 or 6 years old, somewhere around there. I was definitely in grade school for sure. And we were in the rooftop of a building where my dad worked, because he's a maintenance engineer and he has access. And so we were in the rooftop of one of the buildings, and there were other local residents there to watch the fireworks. And I remember I was like next to my dad, and then to my other side, there was a large gentleman. And I remember I was tugging at my dad, and I was like, Daddy, that man is fat. And I said this out loud. I did not even whisper it at all. I just, no filter, just said it. And then my dad, of course, like apologizing to the gentleman right next to us. And then he was just telling me, be quiet, don't say that, Although I can't remember exactly how he went about it, but definitely it was just like a little bit of like reprimand, like, hey, don't say that. What's wrong with you? But part of the childlike part I think is important is the part that's very expressive. It's, and I share that example because part of my journey right now where I'm at, that's part of my inner child that I'm healing, of being expressive, because through a lot of experience I've had have has contributed to me, even at an subconscious level, of playing it small or keeping quiet. You know, think about the child again, like that's been punished. That was just like who was just being their own bright self, expressive and sharing and talking and all this. Talking about a little bit about myself here when I was in elementary school, and then to have to being reprimanded and all this, and you know, um, having these experiences has made me feel a little bit more like putting up defense mechanisms and all this stuff, like all the psychological stuff. I'm sure that happens simultaneously, but just kind of explaining it from the spiritual perspective. It's just that this closing off of my energy. And I think it's important that we reconnect with that, because being expressive and showing up as ourselves is so essential, because that's part of what helps contribute to building authentic relationships with other people. And on top of that, I'm finding that it's something that I'm working to unfold and heal more as I move in my own direction, so I can be more successful. You know, um, like especially when it comes to like in reference to like one's own, like my dreams and my aspirations, my ambitions. I need to tap into my childlike part so I can claim the best life. And I think that is a set can be said about everybody else, in my opinion. Who's gonna live their best life if they're just like closed off or this, or just, again, this is just my personal take. But like people who feel like they want more out of life, if this is you, you're not gonna get all that if you're dealing with, like similar to like what I'm dealing with, of just feeling closed off and feeling a little bit hesitant to share and being myself authentically. Now that isn't, now being authentic doesn't mean to say whatever comes to mind like how I was when I was younger. But it's like speaking my truth from my heart, and what I feel deep down inside, even if it's something that's not pleasant, but I know it needs to be said, it needs to be shared. To do that in a way that's respectful, of course, because that's the key right there. I think when showing up is to be respectful. And so to tap into that inner child, I think is crucial to live the best life, especially for those who really want more out of life. And there's nothing wrong to want more out of life, by the way. I'm saying this, and as I'm saying this, I'm getting these thoughts and feelings of like entitlement. I'm like, who the hell's that? Who the hell's that? What's wrong with wanting more out of life? And even that question itself, like, do you, or not question, but just like that statement, like to want more out of life. Even for myself, just catching myself in that moment, really is telling about, subconsciously, like what's going on there. The programming, conditioning. I don't know if you can relate, but like I said, I know that there's so much out there available to everybody. But there are many people like myself where like I get used to begging for crumbs when I have the whole cake. Like like being a beggar. Can you relate with that? Do you find yourself being like a beggar? Or feel like a type of person that to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." Or if I'm like moving through, just making my way, in the outside in the public, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry, sorry," for like little silly stuff. Do you say "I'm sorry" as a reflex? Because I think that's also a very telling sign of somebody who wants to play it small, like saying sorry too much for things that didn't even warrant a sorry. Like for real, like what's all this? It's crazy. So that's, I'm sharing that little bit because a bit of like my own personal process and where I'm at, which it takes time. Like I'm glad I had this awareness, but now it's like, okay, I got to be involved, have these experiences. I'm kind of, and I know my guides are there helping me out in the background, setting things up so that I can unfold and expand. And as I learn and grow and become more wiser, that's where, here you go. You'll hear about it in my podcast if you stay tuned. So, so subscribe, stay subscribed, if you haven't already, to get more and more insights and more wisdom from this guy. Oh man. And then that's another part too, it's just yeah. So that the inner child, it's never truly lost. It's there, it's there inside of you, and if you have a concern about it, as I hope you would, I hope more people would, then people wouldn't be so bent out of shape, and there would be less people experiencing a lot of turmoil. But aside from just, I understand that with the stuff that's happening out there, of course there are battles that are happening with people within too. I recognize that as well. Trust me, I've gone through my own, and everybody's different, and there's no greater or lesser than. Everybody's going through their own unique journey and experience, and it's important to just honor that. I honor other people's experiences, and I honor my own life experiences, not to undermine or undervalue anybody's, because whatever is going on in whatever's people's life, and even in mine, is it's relevant, it's important, it's essential. So if you really want more out of your life, um, you know, I think it's important not to play small, and I think it's important to expand on that further, is to do the inner work, to create those practices of journaling and reflecting and examining how you go about your day, because that right there, these are skills that translates into all areas of your life: personal, business, social. And that's the gist of part of, why I share all this, like that the childlike part, that's the key to live a more fulfilling, abundant, successful life. And you don't need situations outside in the outer, or your outside circumstances to change before you can start really embodying and living yourself, tapping into that inner child. You can start that right now and shift that. And I would wager that if you start doing that with a little bit of sincerity, that's when that insight out, when you'll find your situation, things start to take a turn for the positive. I know that it has for me when I've done that. That's why I'm sharing it with you. I wouldn't be sharing this with you if I didn't have an experience for it. What's the point in sharing about something that I have no experience about? What's the point of that? That's not my wisdom at all, you know? So all this is coming from a real place. All of these things that I mentioned, I think is necessary to be a light in this world. Like I said, at times it's like a lot of predominantly darkness. At times it seems out there. It's it can be the current reality, but it doesn't have to end, or let that be the end all be all. You know, see yourself as like that candle, and by you being your most shining positive example, imagine like yourself as a candle, and you affect the impact of someone so deeply that you lit up their candle. You help them light up inside. And then imagine if that person did the same for other people that they meet. And then that person does something for the next person. And then the other person, again, so forth and so on. And then it starts creating that beautiful ripple effect. Imagine that. That kind of impact there, you have that capability. So much so, you can move an entire nation. And you might think, well, what the hell are you talking about? No, 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 no. Trust me on this. That's how powerful you are. I remember my guidance even gave me this feeling. They had communicated this to me. I've heard this countless times. And I definitely do understand this. Although oftentimes what happens is, though, we may not see the impact. At least for me, I may not see the impact, and then I start to get kind of bogged down. I'm like, oh, because I'm like, oh, prove it to me. I can't see, or this and that. But it's one of those things that just happens. That's very subtle. Sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes it's just outright like, wow. It's a mixture of things that happens. But nevertheless, though, it doesn't take away from that fact that you are powerful. I don't care who you are. If you're listening to this, you're powerful, my friend. You are powerful. So why not wield that power to be of service, helping other people, giving of yourself while also giving of yourself to yourself, helping yourself. Giving to yourself as you give to others, giving to others as you give to yourself, being of service. In the world of spirit, I know that there is win-win. There aren't any losers, only winners. And the one main requirement I would say to be a winner is to accept that within. To accept that within, to say, I am a winner. In light of all the stuff that's happening out there, yeah, okay, there's stuff going on. Okay, excuses, they're noise. But accept that I am a winner within yourself. And recognizing other people are winners. Again, there are no winners, there are no losers, speaking on that, in the world of spirit. So just a final thought, little message that I wanted to send for this particular episode. Yeah, this is a good one. And I hope you got something out of it. I hope this inspired you. And if you wish to be more of a beacon in your own world, and in your life with the people around you, and you want to work from that inside out, beautiful change, I invite you to check out the show notes and begin educating and deepening your understanding about the bigger picture life, because I think that right there is really important. Really important. Because I think it's important to be aware as opposed to being naive. And even through the awareness, still keeping it light. Because of a deeper understanding to everything, to all the madness. You are a part of a bigger picture. We are all a part of a bigger picture. And so if you made it to this point of the episode, thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate your time and attention. This has been another episode of Spiritual Engineered. I'm your host, Alvin Zepeda, signing out. And as always, take care, my dear friend.